Hi, Genies. It's Fisher. Before we get started, just a quick thank you for getting Extreme Jeans to where it is today. We're on radio stations all over America, and our podcast is growing exponentially. I'm often asked, what can I do to support Extreme Jeans? Well, that's easy. Become a part of our Extreme Jeans Facebook community and like our page. Share the podcast with your friends. Follow us on Twitter. And most importantly, support our sponsors through links on our website. They're the best in the business. Thanks again. Now let's get on to this week's podcast.
Grandpa stole his first buggy in 1892. I met your grandma pig slopping in 46.
Oh, every Christmas we'd visit my Uncle Fred in prison.
How is it even possible? It has been 3 years this week of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. How are you? It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. Boy, we got a lot of great stuff going on right now. First of all, we just started our weekly Genie newsletter here the last little while, and we would love to get you to sign up. To do that, all you have to do is go to our website, extremegenes.com, or go to our Facebook page, and there's a sign-up place right there as well. It is free. No, we're not going to spam you. We're just going to fill you in on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history, and, of course, with Extreme Genes as well. I am very excited about our guests that we've got today. Our first guest coming up in about 7 or 8 minutes, Craig Chartier. He is the director of the Plymouth Archeological Rediscovery Project. And let me tell you about this guy. He figured out from the archaeological discoveries of a home of one of the old pilgrims, John Howland, what their house looked like, how it was shaped and structured. And then he took the inventory from when this man died and was actually able to place where those things were within that house in order to recreate the house and how the man lived and some of the things about his lifestyle. A fascinating thing that you might be able to do with one of your ancestors. So we're going to talk to Craig about that experience and what he learned and what he found. Should be pretty interesting coming up in just a bit. Then later in the show, we're going to visit with a man we talked to almost a year ago, Steve Anderson. You may recall this. He was raised by his mom and dad in Minnesota, one of 9 kids in the family. And through certain circumstances, they learned that their dad wasn't their dad. In fact, they found out that there were at least 8 fathers for the 9 children. Well, some things have happened since we last were into that story. It was episode 100, by the way, if you're going to check back on the podcast. He'll fill us in on the latest on that story coming up later in the show. But right now, it's time to get back from vacation with our good friend David Allen Lambert, the chief genealogist for the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. Are you rested and tanned, David?
I will say the tanning wasn't as good as I wanted, but definitely well rested.
Well, it was a nice break. You went to Williamsburg. I went to Hawaii. And did you discover anything exciting there in Williamsburg?
That I can fire a 69 caliber Brown Bess flintlock musket and get 12 shots on a target.
Woo!
Quite a far distance away. So I guess I would have been good for the Revolutionary War,
Yes.
which kind of ties into earlier this week. The Sons of the American Revolution had their 126th Congress in Boston, and I was honored beyond belief to be sworn in as a new member by the President General Thomas Lawrence in Boston at NEHGS. So
Wow.
I am now an SAR member, number 198863.
There are a lot of us. I'm a member as well, and that's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, compatriot.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's get on with our family histoire news. What do you have for us today?
Well, we have a gentleman by the name of Mark who, when he was about 20 years old in the early 1960s, was told by his father that he was actually adopted. He found his mother and found out her name was Irene Gladys Oldfield. She had given him up for adoption at 9 months of age. He had been born in 1942 over in England during World War II. Well, he went onto the internet, figured out who she was. Unfortunately, she died in Canada and Ontario in 2010, but it listed Diane, John, Jeanette, Jim, Doug, Annette, Carol, Denise, and Robert as her children. So he had a new family. He's been in touch with them and been reunited. So a war baby that was put up for adoption in England is now reunited with a whole new bunch of siblings and no doubt nephews and nieces and great nephews and nieces. So that's a wonderful story.
That's very cool.
Well, digging back a little further, they now believe they may have found a shrine that contains part of the skull of Buddha.
And who is they?
This is the Chinese archaeologists that found a 1,000-year-old shrine containing the skull of Buddha himself, and it is 4 foot by 1.5 feet long, covered with gold and gemstones and glass, and it was found underneath a temple. What they were doing an excavation, and they found a chamber underneath, and voila, there it was. My biggest question is, now will they do DNA? Who's the first one that's going to be able to get in to look at it?
And who's going to find out they have DNA that matches Buddha?
Exactly. So that's another episode of Extreme Genes. And by the way, happy anniversary.
Thank you, sir.
Also kind of war-related, the Japanese government and some lawmakers are considering raising the Japanese World War II battleship Yamato, which sunk back in 1945 as it was steaming towards Okinawa. On board the vessel were over 3,000 war dead that never were reclaimed, and they're still with the ship. So there's some people that say, leave them there. Others that want to bring up the vessel and see them have proper burials. Personally, I think they should just leave it as a burial at sea.
Well, that's one of the challenges we all face is where do we spend our public monies and what's worth the most, right?
Absolutely. My tech tip is for you to muster up your family tree. So look through your charts and see what male ancestors you might have from the colonial time through the 19th or early 20th century that fit in the age range of about 16 to maybe the mid-30s, and then see what wars were going on at that time. Create a little timeline sheet and then see, because I just met with a batch of people from the Sons of the American Revolution that didn't even realize that some of their ancestors they had fit. So they now have new supplemental ancestors.
That's very cool. I like that.
I think it's kind of a fun thing to try. So there's that. And in today's American Ancestors free database, we have cemetery records from 1724 to 1986, over 25,500. And again, this is just a free database brought to you by American Ancestors for our guest users. Well, that's about all I have from Beantown. It's nice to be back to work again, and look forward to talking to you next week, my friend.
All right. Great chatting with you as always, David. We'll talk to you then. And coming up next, we're going to talk to Craig Chartier. He is the director of the Plymouth Archeological Recovery Project. We're going to talk about how he actually took the archaeological studies of the house of a man who lived 300, 400 years ago and then matched that with his inventory to take you on a tour of the house and how the whole thing was put together. It's an amazing journey. You're going to want to hear more about it. Coming up for you in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. This segment has been brought to you by LegacyTree.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andMe.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andMe.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andMe.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andMe.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andMe.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andMe.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andMe.com.
Well, Genies, my personal family history researcher who sends me new information day and night has sent me some incredible new records and newspaper stories lately. Hi, it's Fisher, and the name of that researcher, by the way, is myheritage.com. It's the hardest working service in genealogy, looking for records of your family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, even while you're sleeping. How does it work? MyHeritage uses hundreds of algorithms to match your ancestors to over 5 billion records from around the the world, and with 97% accuracy. That means no more wasting time figuring out whether or not a match really is a match. I hear from listeners all the time who are shocked with how much information is accurately found and then passed along. And now MyHeritage will translate your ancestors' names into English or any other language you like from foreign records. In fact, it works with over 40 languages. No one else does this. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned researcher, you need myheritage.com.
You know, everybody needs a place of their own to plant their family tree, preferably one that no one else can mess with and only you can control. That perfect place is Roots Magic. Roots Magic has been a family history standard for years, and now Roots Magic 7 is on the market. It's an award-winning genealogical software program which makes researching, organizing, and sharing your family history easy. You can start from scratch or import data from other software, or even Family Search. Roots Magic also automatically finds records relating to your ancestors from MyHeritage, Family Search, and soon Ancestry and Find My Past. You can use it to create beautiful charts, reports, and books. And have you ever thought about making your own family history website? Roots Magic can make that happen too. And of course, there are free videos, guides, and technical support to help you along. Isn't it about time you planted your family tree? Whether you're a beginning genie or experienced professional, Roots Magic is the perfect tool for you.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that David Allen Lambert, the chief genealogist for the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org, came on and gave us a little tech tip about using modern technology to map out what your ancestors' home, or maybe even your childhood home or your grandfather's home, looked like back in the day, and use that to share with children and grandchildren what their ancestors' lifestyle was about. Hi, it's Fisher. This is Extreme Genes, America's family history show on extremegenes.com. And over the weekend, I was looking through the website for the Pilgrim John Howland. He is my 10th great-grandfather, and it was very interesting to see that they've been excavating his home site in Plymouth, Massachusetts now for many decades. And recently, a man named Craig Chartier, he's the director of the Plymouth Archeological Project, wrote a great piece about how they took the inventory of John Howland from when he passed away in the 1670s and then matched it up with the archaeology of the house. And this, of course, could apply to all kinds of people doing this, whether you're in the South or the West or whatever. If you have descriptions of your ancestors' place and you have their inventory, you can do some fascinating stuff. And I've got Craig on the line with me right now. Hi, Craig. Welcome to Extreme Genes.
Hey, Scott. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Just to give a little background on John Howland's house, how long has it been since they started excavation there?
The first excavations were carried out way back in 1936 to 1938. They started doing the excavations there on one of the anniversaries of when the house was originally built. It was built in 1636 or 1638. So, on the 300th anniversary, they wanted to do some work and actually do some archaeology there and see what it looked like.
And he and his wife, Elizabeth Tilley, lived there for 30-some-odd years or something like that before he passed on, and then she moved in with her son, Jabez. So what did they find during the course of this excavation, by the way?
What they ended up finding was the actual outline of the whole house. It was a rectangular house, kind of small. It wasn't a big, huge, fancy house or anything. It had a really large chimney, about a 9-foot wide by about 4-foot deep chimney, covering in one entire wall of the house. And then the rest of the house was divided into one big main room with a small room attached to that. So that big main room would have been the hall, and then a small room would have been the parlor, sort of a more intimate room. And then it kind of had a little attachment on the back, a little L, little lean-to kind of extension that was on the back of the house, all with a stone foundation. And then what's really interesting, too, is what they did is John Howland used a piece of his old armor. He used a piece of armor as either a fireback inside the hearth or to cover up a hole in the hearth or something, but they actually found a piece of John Howland's armor inside the hearth.
I had no idea that the Pilgrims brought armor with them from England. Unbelievable.
Yeah, big old piece of armor. It must have been really heavy, a whole suit of armor to wear. Would have been a breastplate and a back plate. The piece that they found was these tassets that would cover the upper part of your leg, but the thing must have been huge and heavy. You can see why they would have gotten rid of it, pretty soon. But.
Now, just off the top of my head, John died in 1672, as I recall, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And at the time, of course, as was the process then, and very much so now in many, many places, they did an inventory of his estate, which meant they listed all the things that he owned because even his wife couldn't inherit it without going through the proper process, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly right.
And so through this, you were able to take this list of things that he had and then look at it as the inventory people basically giving you a tour of the house. Now, you had the outline of the house, so you knew what the place looked like, what the layout was. And so I loved your article because you were able to actually take us on a tour of the inside of John Howland's house. Explain how you did this, how this came to mind, and what some of the things were and what they told you about his lifestyle.
Oh, well, the whole process started when the Howlands contacted me about doing a final report. I mean, like I said, the site was excavated back in the 30s, but there had never been a report done on the site. And, the Howlands are very passionate about their ancestors and are always interested in trying to find out anything they can about their ancestors. And so, as an archaeologist, you can either write a report that's very scientific with lots of jargon that, bores people to tears.
Yes.
That becomes just a too long, didn't read kind of report. Or you can try to tell a story, and that's one of the important aspects of archaeology is to try to tell a story about the past. And so I was trying to come up with, some story using the historical documents, using the archaeological evidence that we had there to try to tell a story about John Howland's life, to try to sort of bring it to life, bring his house and his wife's house to life. And the lovely thing, the wonderful thing about this site is that it had a really, really clearly defined archaeology. And it also had a probate that was really, really detailed. Sometimes you get these probates, and it'll list just everything that's in the house, and there won't be really any order to it. They'll list a coat next to a horse, and they'll list a kettle, next to a cart, and it just didn't seem like it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But in this case here, you could really, just as soon as you started reading the probate, you could really get an idea, a feeling that you can walk around inside the house. And so that's what I tried to do. When I took a look at the probate and tried to write up something interesting about the probate analysis. Like I said, not every probate is like that, but every once in a while you come across a real nice gem that it gives you the chance to really get inside of people's heads and get a real feeling for the people who are there. And so I just mentally in my head I had that outline of the house and I knew what it looked like, and then I just started looking at the probate. And people would go through a front door to get into the house. And so if you think about first things they're going to see when they go through the front door, I just started with that. And then it just naturally flowed as you went around the house. There wasn't a lot of really head scratching. The people who did the probate had listed things just as they must have seen them all throughout the house. So it was really a fascinating read going through it.
So they went from the front door, and then you were able to determine by the list of the items, okay, they went this way into this room, and then to the back of this room, and then over into the cooking area. And you were able to actually just virtually see where they went because of the way they listed it, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you could see that when they went to the front door, the first thing they listed was his musket, his long gun, his cutlass. It was the very first thing. So that must have been right inside the door. So
that tells you basically it's there for protection and something you could grab at the last moment before you open the door, right?
Exactly. I mean, they were living, basically on what was a frontier in Plymouth Colony back in the 1630s. It was in Kingston, Mass, and they were out on a little peninsula called Rocky Nook, but it was still a frontier, and you never knew what might be happening. There could have been Spanish coming, there could have been Native Americans coming, so it'd be really common to keep your weapons right inside the door there so you could have access to them as soon as you open that door. But after that, the next thing they started talking about was things right by the hearth, and we knew where the hearth was in the house from the archaeology.
Right.
And so we knew that once you go inside the house, you had to turn left to get to the hearth. And so by knowing that, we know that the door must have opened to the right, and that all the firearms and stuff were just on the inside of the door on the left-hand side. And then you could look at, all the items that were in the hearth, which there wasn't a lot, but as they sort of left the hearth area, all of a sudden things were divided into what looked like a man's side and a woman's side of the hearth. It was all the sharp tools, the axes, hatchets, mortising axes, hoes, pickaxes, those sorts of things on one side. And then it looked like on the other side was all the things like kettles and pots and pans and chains and things like that, and things that would be associated with, with doing the cooking. So you could just imagine that Elizabeth had her side of the hearth, and John had his side of the hearth, and, the sharpening stone was over in his side of the hearth. So that's probably where he'd be sitting and doing all of his sharpening. And then, as you leave the hearth, you can just sort of imagine how you'd be traveling around the rest of the room. And one of the really neat things that we encountered looking at the probates was a lot of books that were right inside the house.
Did you find out what the books were? Did they identify them specifically?
Some of them were identified, pretty specifically. Some of them were just sort of general names. One was called a Great Bible, and there was actually a Bible back in the 17th century called the Great Bible, a big G and a big B, and that was the first authorized version of the Bible in English. That was authorized by Henry VIII.
Right.
So that was probably a copy of that Great Bible. Some of the other books, eventually it just said something like 7 more books. It's one of those things where you read that as a researcher, you get frustrated. It's like, why couldn't you just write what those 7 other books were?
Yeah.
We were able to look at Elizabeth's probate later on, and she listed some books in there that matched up with those earlier books, and we were able to kind of fill in some details about what some of those other books were as well. So,
wow.
That other probate in her will.
In the excavation, were any of the items listed in the inventory ever recovered?
Yeah, we don't know exactly if those were the exact same things, but, we found things like axes. One of the things they mentioned were jugs and earthenware and earthen pots. And we found fragments of those sorts of things. Talked about a lot of pewter platters and things like wedges, iron wedges. Those are common inside the inventory, and a bunch of iron wedges were actually found during the excavation. So there was the opportunity to actually match up some of the things that are shown in that probate with the actual artifacts that were found. One of the neat things that was in the probate, too, was a set of scales that somebody who was, engaged in selling things would be using to weigh coins and weigh, silver and gold and that kind of thing. And we didn't find an actual set of scales, but there actually was a scale weight of a specific denomination that was found in the excavations that must have gone with that set of scales as well.
Well, hopefully with technology, you'll actually be able to recreate his home digitally and show where all these things were. I mean, that would be an incredible thing to have for Howland descendants. And, of course, a great example for many other people who might want to have access to information about their own homes, get some information from the inventories of their ancestors and put it all together as you have.
Exactly.
Well, awesome, Craig. Thank you so much for your time and sharing this information. I've never seen anything quite like what you wrote, and it was very impressive. And we appreciate your time coming on Extreme Genes.
It was great talking to you. Thank you very much for having me.
He's Craig Chartier. He's the director of the Plymouth Archeological Project. This segment of Extreme Genes has been brought to you by MyHeritage.com. And coming up next, we'll revisit Steve Anderson, the man who came from a family of 9 children with 8 fathers. And they didn't know it. It's in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes.
Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Hovorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks. Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file style and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chart Master's option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chart Masters today at FamilyChartMasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chart Masters will give the greatest care to your family history.
You have found us, America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes, and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And it was about a year ago, maybe 11 months, that we had a man on from Minnesota who gave us a story that I think has been talked about perhaps more than any other story we've had on in the entire 3 years of Extreme Genes. Steve Anderson is his name, and the story was about discovering the fact that in his family of 9 children, there were 8 fathers, and yet they were all raised by the same man, and no, he wasn't the father of any of them. And Steve is back on the line with me right now. How are you, Steve? Welcome back to Extreme Genes.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be here.
So just going back to the beginning, Steve, you discovered at one point, as a result of an accident that involved a brother, the fact that your dad's blood could not be used to help him out when he was in the hospital because dad's blood didn't match. And that was your first hint that there was something uniquely different about your family, correct?
That's right. And then that was followed by 2 other sisters who, because of some events, my mom actually just told them outright that they did not belong to Dad, and in fact told them who their fathers were. The third one didn't know probably until she was about 56 years old, so it was a real surprise to her. But that started the research, the questions that we started looking into, and never really got very far with until DNA testing became affordable.
Right.
And so my brother and I sort of together began the search using DNA and found some fascinating answers to some questions.
Well, that's exactly true. Now, of course, you wound up confronting your mom. And for people who want to hear the whole story, we're not going to do the whole thing all over again. Listen to episode 100 on the podcast, and you can find that on ExtremeGenes.com. It's on iTunes, of course, and you can catch the whole thing. So the bottom line is you discovered that of your siblings, the whole group, the whole family, 9 of you, that there were 8 different fathers involved. You confronted your mother. She left you a list of the names of all the different dads. And since we last talked in, I think it was August of last year, your mom has passed. So what has changed as a result of that, if anything? And did she have anything further to say about it before she passed away?
Well, she did. Before she passed away, about a month or 2 before she passed away, she was 93 when she died, and I confronted her when she was 90. So this is relatively recent. And after I initially confronted her and she gave me the names and stuff, I then talked to my sister, who then approached her and asked some more questions. She basically got the answer that her and 2 of the other sisters for sure belong to Dad. Well, when she left there, she said, "I don't believe that." Was tested and found out she didn't. So she called one of the other sisters and said, we want to get you tested. She got tested and found out she was not Dad's. So the only one left then was the one sister that we really can't tell yet. And she, at this point, doesn't know yet.
So she has no idea. And this is kind of by design that you don't want to inform her at the moment because of the fact that she's made up a little differently than the rest of you in terms of how she handles things like this, yes?
Yeah, she would probably be the one that would, because she really wants to know all the answers, she would probably start talking to people around town. And she's the only one living back there in that town, by the way.
Mm-hmm. In Minnesota.
And we just, and we really, it's just not, we just don't feel comfortable with her starting to ask these questions and approaching people, because we kind of, through the years, have found that a lot of the people in town sort of knew what was happening, Thank goodness we as kids didn't know that. It would have just been impossible to live there had we known that.
Of course. So did Mom reveal anything further before she passed about what was the root of all of this? Because she stayed married to your dad for 25 years, the entire time you were all growing up.
She did. And, it was interesting because we know that Dad knew about some of them. We don't know how many he knew about. But, he never once said anything derogatory about my mother. And in fact, one time when I got really angry with her about something, I was, a teenager,
yeah.
You know how they are. And he, really got after me saying, don't you ever talk about your mother that way. You show her respect. At that time I thought, oh, yeah. And now I look at it and I just think, wow, he was really protecting her. And to the day he died, he never said anything that would indicate that she had done anything inappropriate.
Well, and last time we talked, you had speculated that perhaps he just was unable to have children, and this might have been some kind of arrangement.
Well, that was the joke for a while there. For quite a while we knew about the 3 siblings, and we kind of kidded around with ourselves saying, wouldn't that be funny if we found out Dad was sterile? And now, 9 kids later, none of them his, and he lived with my mother for 25 years. How will you not get somebody pregnant when you're living with them for a husband and wife for 25 years?
Right. Yeah.
Sure adds some legitimacy to that joke, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Let's fast forward here a little bit because you had a family reunion here in the past month or so. How'd that go in Minnesota?
Well, my mom passed away in December, and within our family, when people die in December and January, we don't typically have a big funeral for them. We kind of either cremate them or it's a very small, little intimate gathering of a couple people to make it official, and then we all get together when the weather's warmer. We did that not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. We've all made a promise nobody's going to say anything to anybody until after the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
After the funeral is over, we told our brother, this is the very first one that found out he wasn't Dad's. We told him, and he says, yeah, I figure that's probably the situation. And so the only one left is the one sister. And I wanted to tell her just because I thought she needed to know. First of all, the reason that I started the DNA testing was so that I tested Mom, paid to have Mom and Dad's tested, and then while I was doing it, I thought, well, let's have me tested too. I know I'm Dad, but for grins and giggles. And the idea was that anybody else in the family who wanted to could then pay to have themselves tested because we had the base already created. And so I thought, okay, everybody has a right to know. But the rest of the siblings said, don't you dare tell her. And so, long story short, in the end, I left and she, at this point, doesn't know.
And you're still trying to figure out among your siblings exactly when and how to tell her.
Yeah, and, most of them say, she's almost 70 years old. She can take it to the grave with her. It's not going to ruin her life not to know at this point. We do want to make sure we keep peace in the family, too. None of this was ever done to tear apart the family or to cause grief to any one person. So we want to be real careful with that.
Well, and it's a very delicate thing, and that's one of the side effects, I guess you'd say, of DNA testing, isn't it?
Yeah. My brother always says, Steve, be careful what you ask. You may not like the answer. I'm fine with the answer. I really am. The first 3 months took some really big adjustment. Now it's just a funny story,
Right. It's something that happened.
Yeah, I'm not so sure my sister would think it's that funny, though. That's the one we haven't told yet. So
he's Steve Anderson. He comes from one of the most unique families we've ever run across on Extreme Genes. Thanks so much for coming on, Steve, and giving us an update.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And this segment of the show has been brought to you by 23andMe.com DNA. And coming up next, it is preservation time with Tom Perry from TMCPlace.com, our preservation authority. He's got a question from a listener in Maui coming up in 3 minutes.
Legacy Tree Genealogists is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research, you enjoy the discoveries. legacytree.com.
When someone asks, what is Forever.com, I tell them it's a new kind of digital storage, like for your photos and documents and all the family memories. And they always shoot back with, well, that's not a very new thing. There's Facebook, Shutterfly, Flickr. Then I say, oh, but on Forever, you own all your content. There's no third-party ads, and it's guaranteed for your lifetime, plus 100 years. Do the others do that? Okay, so like I said, Forever.com, a new kind of digital storage. You are the chief memory officer of your family. You get that frantic phone call about the reunion in 2 days and they need the slideshow, and you're ready because you use Forever.com. Photos, news clippings, heck, you automatically upload the photos on your cell phone every day. You have everything digitally stored and organized where you can share it privately with your friends and family. No ads, and it's permanent, guaranteed for generations. Yes, you are the chief memory officer, and you have Forever.com.
Did you know that Family Search Family Tree is available through a powerful new mobile app experience? That's right. Now you can view, edit, and even add information to ancestors in your family tree whenever and wherever you are. You no longer need to wait to get home or make a date with your computer to view or update your family tree. You can add details to your tree when visiting with family or when capturing details from a trip to the cemetery. You can share new family history discoveries from classroom settings. You can even make the most of your time when waiting for doctor appointments or car repairs. Get started today by downloading the free Family Search Family Tree app to your Apple or Android device. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to get the Family Tree app for free. Exploring and expanding your family tree has never been more convenient. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to download the Family Search Family Tree mobile app today.
And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, with Tom Perry, our preservation authority from TMCplace.com. And Tom, it was 3 years ago that we launched this show, and you were here from the very get-go.
Isn't that amazing? 3 years just went by, boom.
And now we're on over 40 radio stations around the country and continuing to grow. And we thank so many people for making all this possible because it's a fun ride.
Oh, it is. It's been so much fun. I love getting these letters at AskTom at TMCplace.com and interacting with different people, finding out what they're interested in, where they're going with their preservation. It's just so much fun to help them get their stuff going.
All right, we've got this email from Ana Taua in Maui, Hawaii.
Woo!
And she said, I just happened to be listening to KAOI radio on Maui early Sunday morning, and I heard your show. Can you tell me what I'm seeing? She said she was looking down into, I guess it's the sprockets on an old VHS tape, and sees white spots in there, kind of the size of a pencil eraser. And she wants to know if she can still transfer videos with this on it. What is that? What's she seeing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we see this a lot in high humidity places like Maui, and I think we need to get over there and have a scanning party.
I just got back. I had a great time. It was fantastic.
No, that's great. Yeah, we get these a lot in the southeast areas and places like that where there's a lot of humidity. What it is, you get mold spores in there. And then when there's a lot of humidity, the mold just grows, and that's what they are. They're little white spots. So if you ever have a tape and you're looking down at the top, there's usually two little clear windows. Mm-hmm. If you see those white spots like she did, what they are is they're mold, and they're mold spores. So they can still be transferred to DVD. You just have to be really careful. Now, one thing I want to warn her about, is don't preview these tapes unless you're going to throw your VCR away when you're done. Because what will happen is if you run one of these mold spored ones through your VCR, they'll get on your heads.
Right.
And then you have a clean tape that you run behind it, and then it's going to put the mold spores on there, which you will not see immediately. However, over a little bit of time, they're going to grow just like the other ones did because of the humidity in Hawaii.
And so what does that do? What does a spore from mold actually do to a tape?
Well, it doesn't really hurt the tape. What it does, it just grows. And so the bad thing is it'll get on your heads and it'll spread just like a virus. And so that's the bad part. Then it'll spread to your next tapes, anything you ever play in that VCR will probably now get mold spores and grow mold on it.
So you have to do what then? Get one particular machine that's specified just for mold spores and then get rid of it when you're done?
Exactly. We've had people who brought in hundreds of those, and we have two things. We say, hey, do you have an old VCR that you don't want anymore that we can use? And if they do, then we'll use theirs to run their entire job and then destroy it after we're done. Don't give it to Goodwill or any place like that, because you're going to be giving this disease to somebody else.
So what do if they don't have that machine?
We go to Goodwill or DI or someplace like that and get a VCR, and we run their job. And when we're done with their job, we throw it away, because you can go in and clean it. But the thing is, mold spores are so teeny tiny, the chances of getting every single one is pretty slim. Like when we're doing standard transfers, after so many passes, we go in and clean the heads anyway.
Right.
And even though 99% of the time, once we transfer a VHS tape to a DVD, the chances are they're never going to use the tape again. However, I don't want to make that decision for somebody. I want them to have the tape back. If they want to do something with it, fine. If they want to throw it away, then that's up to them. But I want to make sure when we give them their tape back, it's in as good or better condition than when they brought it into us.
And of course, we want to keep the originals for as long as possible as well, because you might want to digitize it again someday with better technology, right?
Right. To an extent, that's mostly with film and things, because anytime you're dealing with something that's optical, like negatives, slides, Super 8 film, 8mm, 60mm, all those kind of things, as new technology comes out, you can scan it at a higher resolution and it will look better. In fact, in our next segment, let's get a little bit more into the differences between magnetic transfers and optical transfers.
All right, this segment is brought to you by Forever.com. We'll get to that in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com.
Hey, we're back. Final segment of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, and we're talking preservation with Tom Perry from tmcplace.com. Tom, in the last segment, we were answering Anna's question from Maui about dealing with mold spores, and you were getting into, what is it, 2 different types of optical preservation?
Exactly. A lot of times people get confused. Like we have people that bring in old VHS tapes that want them on Blu-ray because they think they're going to look better. Well, if you take a VHS tape and transfer it to a DVD and play it in a Blu-ray player, it's going to look exactly the same as if you put it on a Blu-ray player and played it in a Blu-ray player. Because the neat thing about Blu-ray players is the new technology, it actually up-converts other DVDs. So if you have an old favorite Disney DVD you've watched for years, when you get your Blu-ray player and you pop that in on your high-def television, you'll actually see it looks better. It hasn't physically changed the DVD. It just goes through and up-converts it to make it look better. And the thing is, the difference is we were talking at just the tail end of the earlier segment is you have magnetic things. Your VHS tapes, your Video 8 tapes, your mini DV tapes, all these different kinds of physical tapes have magnets on them, basically little teeny particles of magnetic, and moving those particles around is what makes your photo or your picture. Just like on audio, it makes your sound.
Right.
And basically what it does, it runs through what we call a head. It's a little electronic head that reads the electronic impulses and turns it into a signal. Now, that's not going to change no matter what kind of equipment you have. The only way it's going to change is if you go through another piece of equipment that can enhance the colors. You can go in and do other ways to manipulate the magnetic pieces themselves. But the actual record head itself, it doesn't care what it is. It's not like, oh, this is going to be better. It's going to be a higher particle count. There's only so many particles there.
You can't change the quality.
Exactly. That won't change. We need another piece of equipment in between. And this is one thing that we've talked about many times. You want to be very, very careful. Whoever transfers your audio or videotapes, make sure they do it in real time. I have seen on the internet where people do VHS tapes for like $10, $11, $12 a piece. There's no way physically you could make money at charging somebody $10 for that much of work. If you're going to do it in real time, that's going to take like 2.5 hours to do a normal VHS tape, you'll go broke. You want people to do it in real time because the fidelity is so much better. So what a lot of people do is they take this 2-hour tape, which in our case would take about 2.5 hours. What they do, they run it at such high speed, they can do it in 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. And you lose a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Anytime you do anything fast, you're going to lose it. Audio, it's not as bad, but I still recommend even audio being done in real time. There are some people that do it in high speed and convert it, which isn't as bad because there's not as much information on an audio tape as there is on a videotape. But anytime, if your only concern is, hey, I can't afford it, this is the only way I'm going to be able to get it transferred, it's better than nothing. If that's the only way you can get your tapes to DVD, that's the only way it's going to happen for you, then go ahead and do it. But hang on to your videotape because as you mentioned in the first segment, maybe 5, 6, 7 years from now, your kids will want to get a better quality transfer. They'll still have your old tape and they'll be able to do it later and get the better transfer at doing it at real time.
Well, you want to get it from the original. You don't want to make the copy from a bad copy, obviously.
Exactly. And that brings up another thing, too. We have people come into our store all the time that have like mini DV camcorders or Video 8 camcorders, and most people didn't have that size of VCRs, so they would transfer their Video 8s or mini DVs to a VHS so they could watch them, which is going backwards. And then they bring in the VHS, say, we want this on a DVD, which now you're on third generation, so it's not going to look anywhere near as good as going back to your original and going to a DVD or a Blu-ray from that.
Getting worse and worse. Thanks so much, Tom.
Good to be here.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. That wraps things up for this week. This segment has been brought to you by FamilySearch.org and RootsMagic.com. Just a reminder, sign up for our brand new newsletter, The Weekly Genie. It's free. You can sign up at extremegenes.com and on our Facebook page. And if you missed any of today's show, of course, catch the podcast on extremegenes.com, iTunes, or iHeartRadio's Talk channel. Talk to you again next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.